Good day, everyone. So my name is Shella Di Malata.
My name is Shane De Los Santos.
I am Jimmy Arabia.
And we are the We will report Chapter 10, Managing Employee Performance. And now we will know about types of performance. First, constantly late or leaves early. While we know that the flexible schedules can provide a work-life balance, managing this flexible schedule is key. Some employees may take advantage and, instead of working at home, they perform non-work related tasks instead. Second, too much time spent doing personal things at work. Most of companies have a policy about using a computer or phone for personal use. For the most companies, some personal use is fine, but it can become a problem if someone doesn't know where to draw the line. Third, inability to handle proprietary information. Many companies handle information, client, and patent information. The ability to keep this information private for the protection of others is important to success of the company. Fourth, family issue. Child care issue, divorce, or other family challenges can cause absenteeism, but also poor work quality. Absenteeism is defined as a habitual pattern of non-being at work. 5. Drug and alcohol abuse. The U.S. Department of Labor say that the 40% of industrial fatalities is 47% of industrial injuries can be tied to alcohol consumption. The U.S. Department of Labor estimates that the employees who use substance are 25 to 30% less production and miss work 3 times or more often. 6. Non-performing. Sometimes employees are just not performing at their peak. Some causes may include family or personal issue, but oftentimes it can mean motivational issue or lack of tools and or ability to their current job. 7. Conflicts with the management or other employees. While it is normal to have the occasional conflict at work, some employees seem to have more than the average owing to a personality issue. Of course, this affects an organization's productivity. 8. Theft. The number of surrounding employees theft are staggering. The American Marketing Association estimates $10 billion is most annual owing to employees theft, while the FBI estimates up to $150 billion annually. And 3. Obviously, this is a serious employee problem that must be addressed. 9. Ethical breaches. The most commonly reported ethical breaches by employees include lying, withholding information, abusive behavior, and misreporting time or hours worked. According to the National Business Ethics Study, sharing certain proprietary information, whether it is against company policy and violating non-compete agreement, are also considered ethical violation. Many companies also have non-fraternization policy that restrict manager from socializing with non-management employee. 10. Harassment. Engagement in sexual harassment, bullying, or other types of harassment would be considered an issue to be dealt with immediately and depending on severity may result in immediate termination. 11. The last, employee conduct outside the workplace. Speaking poorly of the organization or blogs or Facebook, it is an example of conduct occurring outside the workplace that could violate company policy. Violating specific company policy outside work could also result in termination. For example, in 2010, 13 Virgin Atlantic employees were fired after posting criticism about customer and joking about the lack of safety. What influences performance? Internal factors may include the following. First, career goals are not being met with the job. Second, there is a conflict with other employees or the manager. Third, The goals or expectations are not in the line with the employee's abilities. Fourth, the employee's views unfairness in the workplace. And 5, the employee manages time poorly. And last, the employee is dissatisfied with the job. The external factor may include the following. First, employee does not have the correct equipment or tools to perform the job. Second, the job design is incorrect. Third, external motivation factors are absent. 4. There is a lack of management support. 5. Employee skills and job are mismatched. So now we will define about discipline. Discipline. To have an effective discipline process, rules and policy need to be in place and communicated so all employees know the expectation. Here are some guidelines for the creation of rules and organizational policies. First, all rules or procedures should be in written document. Second, rules should be related to the safety and productivity of the organization. Third, rules should be written clearly so no ambiguity occurs between different managers. 4. Supervisor, managers, and human resources should communicate rules clearly in orientation, training, and via other methods. 5. Rules should be revised periodically as the organization needs change. Of course, there is a balance between too many rules and giving employees the freedom to do their work. However, the point of written rules is to maintain consistency. The rules of the performance appraisal in discipline. Beside the written rules, each individual job analysis should have rules and policies that apply to the specific job. We discussed performance appraisal in further detail in employee assessment, but it is worth a mention here as well. The performance appraisal is a systematic process to evaluate employee on annually basis. The organization performance appraisal and general rules and policy should be tools that measure employees' overall performance. If an employee breaks the rules or does not meet expectation of the performance appraisal, the performance issue model, which we discuss next, can be used to correct the behavior.
Performance issue model. Many varieties of performance issue, we will not discuss how to handle each in details here. Instead, we present a model that can be used to develop policies around the performance for fairness and consistency. We view performance issue in one of 5 areas. First, the mandate issue. The mandate issue is a serious and must be addressed immediately. Usually, the mandate issue is one that goes beyond the company and could be a law. Example of mandate issue might include an employee sharing information that violates privacy law, not following safety procedure, or engaging in sexual harassment. For another example, let's say a hospital an employee posts something on his Facebook page that violates patient privacy. This would be considered a mandate issue, not to violate privacy laws, and could be put the hospital in serious trouble. This type of issue need to be handled swiftly. Second performance issue can be called a single incident. Perhaps the employee misspeaks and insults some colleges, or perhaps he or she was over budget or late on a project. This type of incident are usually best solved with a casual conversation to let the employee know what he or she did wasn't appropriate. Consider this type of misstep a development opportunity for your employee. Coaching and working with the employee on this issue can be the best way to nip this problem before it gets worse. Even when a single incident are not immediately corrected, they can evolve into a behavior pattern, which is our third type of performance issue. This can occur when the employee does not think the incident is a big deal because he has not been correct before or may not even realize he's doing something wrong. In this case, it's important to talk with the employee and let him know what is expected. If the employee has been corrected for a behavior pattern but continue to exhibit the same behavior, we call this a persistent pattern. Often you see the employee correct the problem after the initial discussion but then fall back into old habits. If they do not self-correct, it could be they do not have the training or skills to perform the job. In this space of handling performance issue, it is important to let the employee know that the problem is serious, and further action will be taken if it continues. If you believe the employee just doesn't have the skills or knowledge to perform the job, ask him or her about this could be helpful to getting to the root of the problem as well. If the employee continues to be non-performing, you may consider utilizing the progressive discipline process before initiating an employee separation. However, investigating the performance issue should occur before implementing any sort of a discipline. Investigation of performance issue. Investigate the situation. When an employee is having a performance issue, often it's our responsibility as HR professional to investigate the situation. Proper documentation. Proper documentation is necessary should be the employee need to be determined later for the performance issue. The documentation should include the following information: date of incident, time of incident, location if applicable of incident, a description of the performance issue. Note the discussion with the employee on the performance issue. An improvement plan if necessary. Next step, should the employee commit the same infraction. Signature from both the manager and employee. With this proper documentation, the employee and the manager will clearly know the next step that will take should the employee commit the infraction in the future. Once the issue has been documented, the manager and employee should meet about the infraction. An investigative interview. This type of meeting is called an investigative interview and used to make sure the employee is fully aware of the discipline issue. This also allows the employee the opportunity to explain his or her side of the story. This type of meeting should always be conducted in private, never in the presence of other employees. Option for handling performance issue. The progressive discipline process refers to a series of steps taking corrective action on non-performing issue. The progressive discipline process is helpful if the offense is not serious and does not demand immediate dismissal, such as employee death. The progressive discipline process should be documented and applied to all employees committing the same offenses. The steps in the progressive discipline normally are the following: first offense, an official verbal warning, counseling and restatement of expectation. Second offense is official writing warning, documented in the employee file. Third offense is second official warning, an improvement plan may be developed, documented in the employee file. Fourth offense, passive suspension or other punishment, documented in the employee file. Fifth offense, termination and or alternative dispute resolution. Alternative dispute resolution. A wide range of dispute resolution process and the techniques that the parties can use to settle dispute with the help of the third parties. They are used to disagreeing parties who cannot come to an agreement short into litigation. Performance issues. Review by the consecutive higher level of management should whether the disagreement by the employee in a disciplinary procedure. The Ombudsman system. The selected or elected to be the designated individual for employees to go to should they have a complaint or an issue with the discipline procedure. Employee separation. When an employment contract or at-will agreement between the employee and their employer ends, employee separation can occur in any of these scenarios. First, the employer resigns and decides to leave the organization. Second, the employee is terminated for the one and more the performance issue less the previous leave. Lastly, Absconding is when the employee leaves the organization without resigning and following the normal leave process.
Right sizing refers to the process of reducing the total size of employees to ultimately save on costs, which will be to reduce staff, to save money, or right size. Layoff is an involuntary separation from work through no fault of employees, often initiated by employer for economic reason to cut costs. When a company decides to right size and ultimately engage in layoffs, some aspects should be considered. First, is the downturn temporary? There is nothing worse than laying people off only to find that as business increases, you need to hire again. Second, has the organization looked at other ways to cut expenses? Perhaps cutting expenses in other areas would be advisable before choosing to lay people off. Finally, consideration should be given to offering temporary substitutes, voluntary retirement, or changing from a full-time to part-time position. Some employees may even be willing to take a temporary pay cut to reduce costs. If the company has decided the only way to reduce costs is to cut full-time employees, this is often where HR should be directly involved to ensure legal and ethical guidelines are met. Process of layoffs. First, develop a criteria. Second, people selected. Third, severance packages. Employee right is defined as the ability to receive fair treatment from employers. Job protection rights is the right of an employee to any legal injustice done by the employer. There are three main exemptions to do this principle. First, public policy exemption. With a public policy exemption, an employer may not fire an employee if it will violate the individual state's doctrine or statute. Number 2, implied contract exemption. In a breach of an implied contract, the discharged employee can prove that the employer indicated that the employee has job security. The indication does not need to be formally written, only implied. Number 3, good faith and fair dealing exemption. In the good faith and fair dealing exemption, this discharged employee contends that he was not treated fairly. This exemption to the employment at will doctrine is less common than the first two. Other considerations for job protection are also as follows. First, whistleblowing refers to an employee telling the public about ethical or legal violation of his or her organization. Number 2, implied contract. It is in the best interest for HR professionals and managers alike to avoid implying an employee has a contract with the organization. Number 3, constructive discharge means the employee resigned but only because the work condition were so intolerable that he or she had no choice. Number 4, Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act require organization with more than 100 employees to give employees and their communities at least 60 days notice of closure or layoff affecting 50 or more full-time employees. Number 5, retaliatory discharge means punishment of an employee for engaging in a protected activity such as filing a discrimination charge or opposing illegal employer practices. Privacy rights. The rights to privacy is an element of a various legal traditions that intends to restrain governmental and private actions that threaten the privacy of individuals. In regard to privacy, A question exists whether an employer should be allowed to monitor an employee's online activities. This may include work emails, website visited using company property, and also personal activity online. Digital Footprints Incorporation is a company that specializes in tracking the digital movements of employees and can provide report to the organization by tracking footprints. Monitoring of employee posting on external websites. Companies such as Social Sentry, under contract, monitor employee posting on sites such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. The U.S. Patriot Act also includes caveats to privacy when investigating possible terrorist activity. The Patriot Act requires organizations to provide private employee information when requested. Drug testing and the right to privacy is a delicate balancing act. Organizations that implement drug testing often do so for insurance or safety reasons. Because of the Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988, some federal contractors and all federal grantees must agree they will provide a drug-free workplace as a condition for obtaining the contract. Labor union. A union is an organization of employees formed to bargain with an employer. A union is a group of workers who decide to work together toward a collective bargaining agreement. This agreement allows workers to negotiate as one rather than individual. Unions have been a part of the U.S. workplace landscape since the late 1920s. But the Wagner Act of 1935 significantly impacted labor and management relations by addressing several unfair labor practices. The National Labor Relations Board is responsible of administering and enforcing the provision outlined in the Wagner Act. The Act made acts such as interfering with the formation of unions and discriminating in the basis of union membership illegal for employers. Grievance process is a formal way by which employees can submit a complaint regarding something that is not administered correctly in the contract. Grievance process will involve, first, discussion with the direct supervisors. Second, discussion with the union representative. Third, the filing of a formal written grievance complaint.